Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my Mass Effect series perspective. And this was a series that I was really into. I mean, look at this here. I got the first one, I'm like, oh, okay, this can rock it. We'll see what kind of goes on with this, and it really sucked me in and drew me in. So much so that I went with the collector's edition for the second one. It's like, ooh, alright, let's see what's kind of going on here. And I went also for the collector's edition for the third one. Also noticed that it is better with Kinect, for some odd reason. This, oh God, I had so many issues with how this ended that it stopped, like, I normally don't replay games that much, and I could have replayed these because I have also Game Pass, but I also have the Legendary Edition that collects them. It's mainly to make sure that I'd have access to it at a certain point, but that was also before everything's going to be going nutty-doo-dah and potentially forcing you all digital. But this was an important series to me, and also Mass Effect Andromeda, because I saw this cheap, and even after what was going on, I'm like, let's see what kind of goes on with this. So, this is a very kind of strange series for me, because the first two I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed a lot of what was going on in the third one. So this jacket is more like, yeah, okay, we got your space kind of opera, we've got something that kind of works along the lines that has some stuff that works from Star Wars, works from Star Trek, and just kind of makes its own kind of thing together. And then what happens in the third one is just like, hey, what the fuck? And we'll go into what kind of goes on with that, at least from my perspective and my opinion of why this kind of took this series that was going to be this kind of big, kind of important one, kind of like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars to me, and why it just went, And this wasn't the first Bioware game series that I got into. I mean, you saw those big ones in the Legendary Editions. I also have my strategy guides here for the first one, the second one, and the third one. Because I like strategy guides. I like to see kind of what goes on and do some planning and everything of what goes on. That's my style as a gamer. Because otherwise I don't want to pretty much get into a kind of position where I completely and utterly fuck myself and then have to either redo or restart the game. That's not happening. But that's my kind of style on how I kind of go into games. So, and if you don't agree with that, that's cool. I've got no problems with that. But the first kind of Bioware game I got into, at least that I remember, is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And that was more turn-based and set in the Star Wars universe. I was like, wow, okay, and that one's an interesting kind of series perspective to do as well. I played that on PC first, and then I played the sequel on Xbox, which, incidentally enough, was done by Obsidian, which is interesting because I've also got, like the main Fallout ones that I liked were from Bethesda, and then Fallout New Vegas, I'm like, it's fine, but it really wasn't my favorite. Same with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I liked BioWare's one, and Obsidian's wasn't bad. There was just other kind of factors at play. But that's me kind of going into this. I wasn't really a diehard BioWare fan. I had certain kind of understandings of their RPG and their pedigrees, and then this came out. And I'm like, okay, I'll take a chance on this, see what kind of goes on. And let's go here. 2007, man, that's what it was. Like, one great one for like the 360. You take control of Commander Shepard and you start kind of learning about this world and, well, worlds, this galaxy, this whole stuff of like the humans, the Turians, the Asari, the Solarians, the Krogan, everything that's going on in this universe and all the different kind of politics and everything going into play. again, it's that expansive kind of realm that really evokes kind of like Star Trek of like all these different kind of factions, learning about the Spectres and the Council and how humanity is kind of the new kid on the block, where they're like, where the fuck did you come from, you asshole, utilizing these mass relays and everything like that, and learning what's kind of going on before you pretty much get pulled into like this conspiracy of what's going on. You find this weird fucking conduit thing and you get visions of like machines pretty much taking over and the Reaper's coming, and you have to go and fight this legendary Spectre, Saren, because he has decided to ally himself with the Reapers, even though he really hasn't had much choice because of the whole indoctrination kind of thing. And learning how to kind of deal with this, how to make your choices, and how to play as Shepard. Even though Shepard is the main character, you customize them in as much as you really can. Male, female, Paragon, Renegade, which I like a little bit better instead of like good and evil, because you can be more of like, Paragon's like you try and be the good guy, and Renegade can sometimes be the good guy, but you like punch out a fucking asshole whenever you kind of feel like it. So it's more than just a little bit of like good evil kind of outcomes, even though that does come to kind of bite the series in the ass when they have to come to a term to kind of like end it. But that's the one big kind of thing. The other thing is this gameplay is not turn-based. It is a third-person cover shooter with abilities, and you've got ammo in this one where you can change up to fight different kind of effects of like burning, cryo, electric, that kind of stuff. Change it up of fighting like other cover-based shooting aliens, zombie kind of Geth kind of things with like Reaper technology and all that, and then also learning and going through and picking choices and learning more about your crew, like Garrus, Rex, Ashley, Caden, Joker, and learning more about the Normandy, and just how it really did a nice job of opening up a new kind of universe to kind of go in and kind of have fun and immerse yourself in it. This was an RPG that really kind of formed me. I'm like, okay, this is cool. I can't wait to see what goes on here, what choices I can make, and what goes on. Now, granted, that was around a time when I could devote myself to a lot of that kind of game, and I could still do that with certain kind of things, but like, again, usually when I do these kind of games, I do them, then I'm done with them, and I'm like, yeah, okay, getting it again just to make sure I have access, or at least can show access to other people as well. Now, the main kind of thing is trying to figure out gearing. Like, the weaknesses were kind of pretty much the loading, because it was on the 360. You had elevators that were pretty much hiding your loading screens. Gear management was not as intuitive. Like, I'm not sure what the Legendary Edition did to kind of update those kinds of effects, but it's probably faster. Inventory management was really kind of a bummer. The Mako handled like shit. Though, granted, it was better than most kind of things that we get later on in the series, because you actually can like explore certain stuff on different planets doing kind of space exploration, which, if you're going to do space exploration, make it a good enough kind of thing where you kind of tailor-make it. Because, again, this also goes back to like my criticism of Starfield. Yeah, you can go around, but you're running around procedurally generated kind of stuff and just copy and pasted things. Granted, you have the same kind of effect going around and running around in the Mako trying to deal with shit and being like, I don't want to make sure that I accidentally thunderfuck myself off of a cliff or something. And the whole thing is, we really don't get better Mako. They just fucking scrap it. And like, no, the whole point of giving kind of criticism is like, if like to try and make it better. Now, granted, if you can't make it better and it's just frustrating people, then I completely get just be like, we can't fix it, so might as well just remove it so that way people aren't frustrated with it. So there, I get it. You know what I mean? If that's kind of the route that had to kind of be going for that. So, we pretty much get through this. We're learning the conspiracy. We're learning about the Reapers, and like, yeah, we're coming to fuck your shit up, motherfucker. It's like, I'm Shepard. This is the Citadel. Eat my ass with a blade of grass, motherfucker. And you get a nice boss battle with Saren at the end, and you take on. Let me see. There's a Sovereign. Yeah, Sovereign. And then you see all of the choices you made culminating and getting the kind of readouts of those choices, which then will affect you when you go into Mass Effect 2. Let me see here. Oh yeah, you got Shepard, you got the Collectors. Now this one was interesting because it's like, okay, how are we going to go from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2? Well, we're going to pretty much kill Shepard and then bring him back and have him work with this organization Cerberus, which are pretty much human supremacist assholes. But we see that human colonies are being raided by this weird kind of force. It's like, what the fuck's going on? We learn about the Collectors. We learn as we pretty much gather our ragtag group of pretty much for a suicide mission to take on the Collectors. And people are like, Shepard, why are you, like, we thought you were dead, man. Because that's how it fucking opens. And you're like, okay. And you get introduced to a new kind of cadre of characters. Miranda, Jacob, Jack, Grunt, which is like a uber maxed out fucking Krogan dude who came from like a fucking, like baby vat grew him. Zahid, Thane the assassin, Samara? Give me characters. Garrus is back. Tally. Morden. Yeah. And Legion. One, a Geth. And of course, you've got the whole kind of thing going on with the Geth and the Quarian. Of the Quarians made the Geth, and the Geth rebelled. Kind of putting in this whole kind of thing of machine versus organics. That is an important kind of throughput that is carried throughout these games that unfortunately comes into some problems in the third one. But it was kind of cool to see what kind of changed up in this because they streamlined the approaches. You don't have as much gear to kind of fuck with at this point where you're like getting stat sticks. You don't have to deal with ammo except it's just like it just regenerates pretty much, which is kind of nice. You don't have the Mako. However, instead of having the Mako to explore things, you then have to shoot probes at fucking planets to get resources. I understand that you need to somehow make resource gathering interesting. Now the thing is, this is done by EA. I almost think that this shit was made pretty much tedious to eventually at some point... Ah shit, I have to watch that. I got a bonus DVD with behind the scenes and making of videos. But EA has a bad fucking habit of being like, hey, let's do some weird-ass resource thing to make sure that we do, like, microtransactions. That doesn't get into the full force in this, but it's more like, I know you've got a certain kind of amount of leeway for gameplay-wise of how you do gathering resources, but it's stupid to try and find the fucking hole that you gotta shoot a fucking probe into to get your resources to upgrade the Normandy and everything like that. At the time, I was kind of alright with it, even though I was like, this is kind of annoying and stupid. I was still into the story trying to figure out what Cerberus' mission was, should I trust the elusive man, what's going on with the Collectors, and learning the final kind of truth of what the Reapers have been doing, and that the Reapers gather and take a species and make a new Reaper, as we see the human Reaper that was being made with the suicide mission. And the thing is, if you don't do everything correctly, you will lose people here. And it takes a lot to actually get that kind of good part in the mission. Hence why I do my strategy guides, to get the kind of best possible outcome where I make sure that all my people work out. I do their loyalty missions so that way I completely understand them. I know who... biggest kind of issue is that if you wanted to continue romances or whatnot from the first game, you don't really have that kind of a choice in the second one to continue it, and then you're kind of fused together all of them in the third one. Hoodie. So that kind of thing where the choices kind of work together and kind of carry over, do but don't. It was really kind of a strange decision at the time. It's like, all right, because we're trying to carry everything over, because you can carry over your character and everything, how they look and all that, so you don't have to make them again. And then we get to the third one. Now, we have done this from 2007, 2010 for the second one, and then 2012 for the third one. I'd been waiting for this. I was like, how are we going to conclude this with the Reapers? Because that was a big kind of thing. It's like, how is humanity going to do this? How are we going to fight them? What's going to be going on? And I really didn't think of it at the time. I was just glad to be able to play the game and get through it, and I found the stories and the characters interesting. But we don't really focus much on the Reapers other than the weird kind of thing of them coming after us and then going towards the end and trying to figure out how to deal with them. So that mainly kind of popped up with Reverb Jill Sandwiches doing his Let's Play and me and him discussing what's kind of going on with it. And trying to run from the Reapers, fine, makes sense, but it makes it annoying to get around the systems. We are dealing mainly with trying to get everybody up to galactic preparedness. And a big kind of thing is this also introduced online multiplayer. Yes, because up until this point, we're single player. That needs to actually be addressed because we have seen EA introducing multiplayer into games that normally don't really need it, kind of like in Dead Space. Mostly in Dead Space 2. I mean, it's fun to play as a Necro Baby, but why the fuck do I need to play as a Necro Baby when I'm trying to fight and kill the Necro Babies as Isaac? This mainly gets you that you had to do it at the time for Galactic Preparedness. I know that they changed that up with what was going on in the Legacy Edition and trying to include as much of the DLC as possible. Most of the time, I didn't really go for the DLCs. I played the games. I'm like, alright, that's fine. And after I got to the end of this, I really didn't give a shit about the DLCs at that point because the ending soured this series so much for me. And pretty much, I know that we're getting another Mass Effect, but it really had a negative impact to this series as a whole. And the thing is, I was fine, but the main thing should have been like going after the Reapers and everything. Now granted, I liked the side stories of dealing with the Quarians and the Geth and getting them to make peace, understanding EDI, understanding the Krogan and the Solarians, and dealing with the Genophage, trying to gather up all your allies, but then you've got the fucking Star Child thing, and Shepard having to deal with that, and then we get towards the end, we've got our galactic readiness up and prepared, and then we get the most awkward fucking shift story-wise possible. Now, my biggest issue is the execution and trying to marry it to the story that we have been building through 1 and 2. And mainly through my discussions and my understandings. I like the stories that are presented, but the cohesive narrative of the third one isn't as strong as it could be. Because we get introduced to the Star Child, we get introduced with the whole Catalyst thing, and that's like, oh, you can destroy all organics, you can control the Reapers, because we see that the Elusive Man has been indoctrinated. There was also the theory that Shepard was in the process of being indoctrinated for this, and that they could change up the Mass Effect ending that way. Or you can synthesize organics and inorganics. And Shepard does not bring up any kind of past kind of choices that have been made, and this was a whole thing, that your choices would matter and would influence your endings. If you couldn't do that, That's a fine kind of thing. You could have just done something which kind of listed out what was happening and what went on. You didn't have to do everything that needed to be done. You could have just presented a good enough ending and told us the outcomes of our choices. That would have been perfectly acceptable. This railroads pretty much all of your choices into those three kind of choices without even bringing up the ramifications of the choices that you've made. If you have decided to get peace between the Quarians and the Geth, you cannot bring this up to the Star Child to say that, hey, this whole inevitability of war between organics and inorganics that the Reapers are precipitating of just this is why they're doing this to create this kind of weird galactic cycle of kind of a Ragnarok. You're like, no, we've shown this. We've also got the Prometheans getting Javik and learning everything that kind of went on with that. And there's just like so many examples that you could do, like of Edie and Joker, and even the end where Shepard has arrayed a cadre of different races, organic and inorganic, to stop the Reapers themselves is not brought up as like a valid argument. You need to pick one of these three endings that are also color-coded. It's like we have this whole kind of thing, and they didn't understand where they kind of went it and wanted to make the main theme. And then at the end, almost like a college paper, we get to the concluding paragraph, and even though this person has been rambling on about, like, maybe Cheeto Puffs and microplastics in fucking tanning oil, however, they come to the conclusion at the end of their paper that dogs and cats, which somehow were also peppered in throughout the paper, must live in harmony, otherwise galactic doom and shit shall ensue. It's like, okay, it was a throughput, but this is the theme you're making? This is what you're trying to argue against? I know that sounds weird and random, but there's a lot of stuff and a lot of things that were going on within the Mass Effect series and the Mass Effect narrative. And then it's boiled down to organics and inorganics will fight each other because one must prevail over the other. And this is what the Reapers are trying to prevent. They are trying to prevent a war between organics and inorganics by killing organics and harvesting them. Huh. And you can't point out the stupidity of this, even though they did at a point where you could shoot the motherfucker, and then everybody dies and the Reapers continue their shit. We did get DLC that kind of expanded upon this, but each of these three endings really fucking sucks. You either initiate a genocide against all inorganic life. No. You take control of the Reapers and essentially fuck off to essentially potentially go rampant Shepard and do the Reaper shit all over again. And then Synthesis is giving nobody a choice and then just fusing everybody with tech and everything. That's pretty much the first one that I picked, even though there's pretty much no really good kind of one. I kind of, at the end, I'm like, what the fuck? Again, it's down to the execution of what goes on. It's totally jarring to be like, oh, okay, you're dealing with this big battle on Earth, and then you get to this point, it's like, is there any kind of choices besides, like, one of these three that, like, factors into what's kind of going on here? And you utilize this stuff, and the Mass Effect relays are destroyed, and your crew crash lands on a place, and you kind of see the fallout of what's going on, and you're like, it really killed it for me. I'm like, this is what you chose to end with? And up until that point, I was fine. We had our refinements, we had new characters, we got old characters. You could carry over your relationship between either Mass Effect 2 or Mass Effect 1. You got to see your characters get their kind of cool kind of stories. I understand that the Citadel DLC is actually pretty good and gives your characters a nice kind of send-off and everything. Well, I do have a problem with that, and that this is supposed to be the conclusion, and that should be built in and not DLC. If you can't, like, you need that there. You need it. Ugh. And it just... I don't have a problem with the theme as they were trying to present it. It's just, it comes out of nowhere and doesn't really jive with what we've already been accomplishing in the story up until this point with us being our shepherd, and that's the whole thing. We have been given up until this point that this is our shepherd and we can make our choices and come out this way. And they should have been able to kind of do that and let everybody have their own kind of shepherd ending. Granted, within reason. You can't have 563,222,000,8,500. I don't know. Yeah. Or like 8,500 different kind of endings. You know what I mean? Like, I get that. But to then narrow us down to this and to kind of fall away from all this stuff, like you've done all this galactic readiness, you've done the stupid multiplayer shit to make sure you had everything up in play, and you're trying to make sure that you get your best ending possible, and no matter what you get to, you're like, what? Now granted, if you don't get your galactic readiness to the great point, you do get the, yeah, fucked up, Fred, and die kind of shit, but that's kind of like a forced game over more than like an ending kind of thing. And I'm just like, I don't know what went on with this. It was just kind of crazy, and I just never really messed with the series after that. I was like, huh, alright. So this went from a high point for me, like a great 360 series, where I'm like, alright, cool. And for me to look forward to Bioware, to being like, huh, okay. Then we get Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, I pretty much waited for this to be kind of cheap. I really didn't care that much in 2017. New setting, cast of characters, and see kind of what goes on. And that there was this pretty much thing. They're like, the Reaper could fuck us, so they like sent off like ARC ships into the Andromeda Galaxy. And I'm like, okay, nice. See what goes on. However, I had heard that like this had a lot of problems, like a lot of games releasing anymore with like animations and all that stuff. I got it after it was ironed out, and it was comparable. I mean, this wasn't BioWare's best team on it, but I thought that the gameplay was technical enough and just good enough, third-person shooter-wise, ability-wise, to like work out. I always go the kind of soldier kind of class. And of course, your rider, pretty much kind of analogous to the shepherd, where you have to like lead your arcs and everything. You're trying to find everybody. Everybody's scattered. We get things that are kind of similar to the collectors. You're the Pathfinder, tasked with finding a new world for humanity, while also dealing with the Ket, and dealing with a mysterious intelligent species known as the Remnant. My biggest kind of issue became into the effect that this became more kind of MMOized, where they're like, we need to make a big RPG game. I didn't feel how big this kind of stuff was because it felt like crafted enough that I'm like, okay, it's not really repeating stuff. I played Dragon Age Inquisition, almost beat it, but got completely and utterly tired of it because of its MMO kind of stuff, like fetch quest, kill quest, where it's not. They have a lot of the same quests that really don't really give me much about the world or the characters or anything like that. I'm just like, okay. This one I still beat, but it was still like, okay. We get similar stuff with the Ket, because the collectors were pretty much used by the Reapers to collect humans and create the new human Reaper. Why am I there? Synopsis. And the thing is, we're in a new galaxy, and we don't get really a lot of new crazy-looking species. Like, we get a lot of the iconic ones of, like, the Turians, Asari, Krogan, all the different kind of ones. We don't really get that much here. And your love interests are kind of just there. You don't really have as much kind of variety as you got with the other ones. At least to me. Yeah, we learned that the Ket have been turning the Angora into more Ket. There's vaults and everything like that, which incidentally enough kind of is more kind of in, the same to like fucking Bethesda's Fallout. They settle at the end on a humanity home. I don't really. We also get a post-credit scene with the Archon second-in-command Primus observing Meridian, hinting at a possible future threat, but they really haven't done much with it because of how lukewarm the response was for this. They are making another Mass Effect, but we'll have to see how that kind of works out, because with video game industry churn, the ones that made or were involved with these are pretty much gone at this point, even the like Legendary Edition. So it'll be some other kind of game at this point, which can work in its favor or could work to its detriment. It depends upon what goes on with it. I don't know. Because the biggest thing is not the question of Bioware, but of EA forcing certain stuff on them. Because EA is dumb. I know that sounds like a weird statement to get to just be like, EA is dumb. Yes, water is wet. Basic kind of observation. Because I didn't think we'd get the Star Wars, like single-player games like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, or even a remake of Dead Space 1, where they're decent single-player games. Because they had gotten Bioware to attempt to make a live service game in Anthem. I was interested in Anthem because I'm like, ooh, it's Bioware. Let's see if they're kind of back on form. And then it's like, ah, shit, you forced them to try and do a Destiny thing? And goddamn, I've already talked about Destiny, and Destiny's gotten even worse. That's like, oh, sweet baby Jesus. It didn't work out well. But then again, EA doesn't want to invest really in things. Like, I'm surprised that they let BioWare stay alive after Anthem. To be honest with you, because usually if they get something that they don't really work for, they fucking kill the studio. It's... Now, I am fine with certain missteps if they are learned from. I'm not going to completely kibosh a studio or be like, fuck off. But I'll definitely be like, alright, if you've learned and I can see that you're attempting to do something pretty cool, I'll give it to you. Like, CD Projekt Red was high with me because of The Witcher 3, even though that had issues and everything. And then I saw Cyberpunk and what was going on. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm glad they fixed it. But it didn't need to launch in that kind of condition. With these, it's like, alright, what am I getting here? I mean, EA and their management of BioWare has led to fucking weird shit going on with this series. And I'm like, what is going to happen with this next Mass Effect? Is it a continuation of this? Are we just saying, fuck Andromeda? It honestly wasn't that bad, but it really wasn't that memorable. It was more like, alright. Even the choices and the characters you had weren't as good as this. But it wasn't like the most horrendous thing I've played. I've had other games, like Deadly Premonition, where I'm like, what the fuck? It, like, I'd go and do it better when I get into, like, talking about Final Fantasy, where there's a base level game where it's like, I don't hate it, but I don't love it. It's just that kind of base there of, like, if I had a neutral 0, that's where it would pretty much be. So, yeah, this series is a weird one for me. But it's an important one for me as well, because it was going to be that thing that elevated to, like, my Star Wars kind of thing. Where, like, I had a video game series where I'm like, yes, yes. That understood that kind of awe and wonder and, like, awesome sense of adventure that you could get going through with these characters and these stories and these events. And what you could learn about these characters and yourself as well, and the choices that you make. That's why I always like to go with these kind of RPGs and figure out what's kind of going on and everything that you can do and what kind of fits my playstyle and the character that I kind of want to be. And the ending, man. Again, it's the execution. If it had been better built up and better segued into and maybe took into account more on the choices, I don't think it would have been as shocking as it was, because you don't build up of, oh, all of your choices matter, and then you're like, what the fuck? So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this series goes and what it kind of becomes, because the Bioware that is making it today is not the Bioware that made this, the original trilogy, or Andromeda, so it's definitely a big kind of question mark. It could be awesome, it could be a return to form, it could be a complete and utter fire that completely kills Bioware, which I don't hope for. I mean, if anyone can, like, deal with, like, making Anthem and then staying alive, I'm like, okay, it's mainly down to EA. EA fucking sucks. I mean, Activision isn't any better, but now we've got fucking mega corporations just fucking buying each other up under the point that we're getting just pretty much... it's gonna be so fucking stupid. It's gonna consolidate and then hopefully kind of crash out. Almost similar to kind of fucking a Doom thing. Like the Golden Path plan or whatnot. And then hopefully I don't know, man. There's a lot of different kind of effects and forces, but we'll see what kind of goes on. I still have fun for this series because I did have good times and I loved learning about the characters. But this was the first kind of instance where I had, like, if an ending really does not stick it can truly affect your feelings for the whole entire thing. And this was before Game of Thrones, and Game of Thrones series finale is like, oh god, that final season. That one was the biggest prime example that I got. I'm like, what? That introduced a whole hell of a lot of different kind of shit. So, those are my opinions on the series. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.